Hi, everybody. Welcome to First Center, First Church. This is our Louise Hay class. If this is your first time here, we want to give you a special welcome because this is an ongoing class. Many of you sign on through one of our social media programs. We're on YouTube, we use Twitter, we're on Instagram, and sometimes you forget that you even expressed interest. So we want to welcome you. This is every Thursday, and we also meet on Sunday mornings at 10:45. We come to this class to learn how to heal our lives, and sometimes it's easy because we encounter suggestions that are very positive and uplifting. And sometimes it's a challenge for us because we encounter ourselves with our problems along the way. So when we're encountering problems, there was an old talk I've done before. And the question is, how well do you bounce? And it's an important thing to consider. You know, how are you at dealing with life on life's terms? Because life is always presenting us with something new. Sometimes it's unexpected, sometimes it's an obstacle, sometimes it's presenting us with something that's really challenging. How adaptable are we when things are not going the way we want? So that was a talk I did long ago, how well do we bounce? And we used I think it was a Disney character, Tigger, if I'm not mistaken, and he had an eraser head and he had some springs, and basically we were trying to tell a story that we get to make mistakes. We had the eraser head, and then there's the character had springs, and so in this journey of life, we do make mistakes, and we correct our mistakes, and we hopefully bounce back. We recover, and we move forward. In this particular class, which is based upon the book You Can Heal Your Life, and again, Louise Hay herself was a student here at our particular place in New York, and we carry on with the same message she was teaching, and we learn the value from Louise and from the Science of Mind, the value of self-talk. And what does that mean? Well, that's really the conversation that lives with you when you're alone at night at 10 o'clock or in the early morning hours, and what the thoughts that you're thinking that are circulating in your head. That's the talk that matters most. That inner chatter, that inner dialogue is so powerful, because what it represents is it represents the collection of thoughts that stream through your mind throughout the day. We call that our consciousness. If you're new, our consciousness is going to be the totality of what you know. And you might be sitting around and you may, you walk through your jobs, you might have a great job, or you might have an important job, or you might not have a job at all. But we present ourselves to the world. We put like our best foot forward, our best face forward. And that's human nature, and that's good. But when we're alone and by ourselves, when we're confronting the fact that maybe we're getting older, or we can't do things as well, or there's been rejection in our life, or there's been hurt, or there's been pain. And most of us have been through some of this, right? How well do you bounce from that stuff? I mean, and what do you do? And when I mean do it, it's not necessarily doing, but what do you say to yourself? When all that's going on and you're left in those moments with yourself, nobody can save you and nobody can fix you, but you do have the power to turn all of that around, which is, of course, what we teach here every Thursday and every Sunday. So there's value in paying attention to what we call our self-talk, that in what I oftentimes most weeks say internal dialogue. And some of you are not even conscious that you're doing it. But your mind is very active always, right? So there's always this stream of consciousness that's going on within everyone. And that stream of consciousness is very, very powerful. You might not think of it as such, but it's powerful. And as one of my friends corrects me sometimes, she says, well, it isn't the individual thought. And I say, okay, well, what is it? She said, well, it's the tendency of the thought in the consciousness. So if you've got an individual who's got a consciousness that's, everyone's here to be helpful, if that's really how they show up, and we all know a few people like that, where their disposition is sunny and they're just basically always have got a positive vibe going on, and no matter what's happening, they have the capacity to lift themselves up and just see the good. Well, that's an unusual person, first and foremost. More common is going to be someone whose their consciousness is a mixed bag, and maybe there's a lot of complaining that's going on. Sometimes I exaggerate it, and I talk about this fictional character from our youth, Chicken Little, who used to say that the sky is falling, and the sky is falling. And of course, that's just a fictional character that was, we learned as kids. Before that, I think the character was called Henny Penny. But the point would be, if that consciousness was, you're just always talking about, the negative things that are happening to you and in your world. It could be the price of gasoline, or this is 2020, it's the price of food, the price of inflation. It could be about, what someone has done to you in the past that you can't seem to let go of. Every time you think of the person, your blood boils. It's very difficult for you to be in a new moment around this particular individual or these circumstances. All that type of thinking that goes on when you are with the most important person in the world, which is you, that's your self-talk, right? And that self-talk is just as creative as God itself, because the thing we understand here is we are individualizations of this one power. Whatever it has, we have in the miniature, and so we're individualizations of this one life, and we are creators in our own life. We are the authors of our own experience. So that self-talk is really important. So you might not think it's important. Sometimes I know in my life, I might be sitting in front of the TV and I'll go from program to program, and I'm bombarding my consciousness with all kinds of stuff, and maybe I'm doing it just because I don't want to be thinking what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm trying to change my thinking, but there's probably better ways I could be changing my thinking. You've heard me said before from one of my great teachers that we live in a time and an age where we can commune with some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. And you can do so now through books, of course, as always, or you could do it through YouTube, or you could do it through TED Talks. You could do it in lots of ways. You can do it through meditation. You can do it through affirmative prayer. You can do it through journaling. But finding a way to take a pause from that dialogue that lives inside of us is really an important thing. Louise Hay would say, every thought I think is creating my future. And she was right. But really, to make a Louise more right, it would be the collective thoughts. The thoughts that are living with us all day long are creating our afternoon, our evening, our tomorrow. They're also setting us up for our interactions with people that we're going to encounter throughout the day. Because if I'm having a bad day and I'm struggling, and the next person who comes into my space, if I'm carrying all this unhappiness, I might have gone through something in the morning or something that's fearful, or, we go through a lot as people, and then you encounter somebody and holy gods, they have no idea what they're in for, because you take that with you. So we try to get a handle on all that here, and we try to develop some awareness. First of all, that our thoughts are things. Our thoughts have power. Our thoughts collectively in our stream of consciousness represents our consciousness, and our consciousness is creating our life. And so now I've told you how it works a little bit. Then comes the great book written by Louise Hay, which is entitled You Can Heal Your Life. And so you learn some basics here. We don't do the heavy duty stuff here, and because you don't have to. Louise Hay, thank God she lived, and she, took our teaching, and she said it's all very simple. And it really is very simple. You don't have to necessarily take all of our courses, though you can. The courses are great. They're self-enriching. They can fill you with awe and wonder, but you don't have to. You can greatly improve your life and heal your life, as Louise Hay said, by following what she described as her principles, which are in the beginning of this book. So we learn the value of our talk, and we begin to understand that the conversation that we're having with ourselves is the one that shows up in our world. So I guess what I'm saying is be careful of your thinking. And I don't like to induce fear, so I won't say be careful of your thinking, but I'll say be mindful of your thinking, because be mindful that this power is in your word, what the old timers would say, in our word. It's not just our word, it's in our thoughts, it's our feelings, it's what you hold in your heart to be true and what you think about, that's going to begin to manifest in your life. That's really the way the law of attraction works. It's some people now talk of what we teach as the law of attraction. Well, that's the way it works. It was Emerson years ago who said that we pay for everything in spiritual coin. And all he was trying to say there is, you don't get something for nothing. If you want to embody something good, if you want to have something good in your life, you have to embody that idea. And the others, conversely, if you have a lot of negativity going on in you, that's going to show up in your world too. And it doesn't have to be that way, but the way life works, it works according to what we call the law of attraction, the law of correspondence. And whatever is living inside of you eventually shows up out on the outside. So I'm going to go to my notes a little bit here. The thing we want to understand in this teaching, in this class, is life is responding to us all the time, and it always has been. And Louise made the point of saying all healing is self-healing, and you can heal anything in your life that you really want to. But you have to really want to. You have to want to well enough to let go of something oftentimes. Maybe it's the need to be right. You say you want to have a happy relationship, then maybe you need to let go of something. The need to criticize, or the need to be right. I've learned in my long life is you don't have to be right about everything. I mean, and you can let people have their opinions. You don't really have to offer a rebuttal. Sometimes people just need somebody to hear them. And there's an old adage, which you've heard before, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I've come to realize that, and this comes directly from Louise Hay's material and listening to it for over 25 years, that everyone, however they're showing up, is doing the best that they can. And you might think, my God, they're a mess and they're doing all these terrible things. And from your vantage point, that's exactly true. But if you're looking at it from a metaphysical or spiritual perspective, people are really doing the best that they can with what they know. And even if they're doing things that seem awful, this is where they are. And they're evolving along the way, the same way I have and you have. And many of the things that I might have been able to do when I was, say, 20 or 25, I wouldn't even think of doing anymore. It's like people grow and they grow up. Each of us, I want to point out, in this lesson, are wonderful creators in our own right, in our own way. You're unique. You're all doing it differently, and that's really the wonder of it all. Unique, wonderful creators in your own right. And each of us throughout our life have been very busy creating our life and our day-to-day experiences. So First of all, I want everybody to think of themselves as a creator. You might think, I am the creator of my own life. And you are. You've brought in everything. I'll say the good, the bad, the ugly, especially the good, right? You brought it in as by virtue of your own consciousness. Sometimes my metaphysical friends, they're usually ministers, will say, well, so-and-so, or I'm tripping myself up with my consciousness. And all they're really saying is, look, I got stuck on something, I'm thinking about it the wrong way, and as a consequence, I'm in pain, and I'm not experiencing, the connection and the happiness and joy I could. None of these people who are in this for any length of time are blaming anybody. That's one of the first things I notice as you heal your life. The whole blame game stops. You start languaging it like, I allowed this to happen. I participated in this, I allowed. We step out of that whole place of a victim, like Sam did this, or Jimmy did this, or they did this to me, because that's really, it's not the right way of thinking of it. What we want to do here is we want to surrender that role and realize, okay, you might be letting people do more in your life than you ought to. So if you are, then it's time for you to step up and create a boundary. You don't have to crucify the other person or hurt them. You're in a dance with everybody, a cosmic dance. And, what we're learning to do in this class is we're learning to love ourselves more and more. We're never here to be making other people wrong. That's not what we do. So all of us are one with Spirit. And it might be good for you to think of yourself as a co-creator of your life. Spirit is operating in you and through you, and it's in every cell in your body, and it has the ability to heal your body and heal your mind and heal your circumstances. But you need to be the director. You need to get out of what we call the stagecoach that we teach the kids and get on the platform and use the power that you have. You need to direct it. You need to change your thinking sometimes. Not all the time, but you need to change your thinking. When you're going low, you need to hitch your wagon to a star, and you need to aim higher. So when we're aware of our connection with life and we're one with Spirit, and we know that we have the ability to choose, always. If you allow yourself to get into a new moment, you could see peace instead of whatever you're seeing. If you allow yourself in a new moment, you can look at that person you've been mad at and just let them go. And just understand they're doing the best they can right there. See, this isn't about them. It's always going to be your glorious opportunity to see things differently in a new moment. And that's what a New Thought practitioner does. He or she practices seeing the good in a new moment. And so we have the opportunity to create endless experiences each and every day and each and every week of our life. Here's an expression most of you know in this lesson. It's like attracts like. Wherever your consciousness is along the spectrum of life, it's important to know that it's always moving upwards, it's always evolving. And wherever you are in the evolutionary process, and you might think, geez, God, I've done some terrible things, and I've just gotten out of this divorce, or I'm in the middle of this thing, and I've done this person wrong, or I've lied, or I've cheated, or whatever it is. Wherever you happen to be in this spectrum of life, it's important to know that you are a being, a spiritual being, and you're evolving. And you got to find a way to cut yourself a little bit of slack. You can acknowledge where you're missing the mark, and that's what our word for sin, translated from the Bible, the ancient Aramaic, is missing the mark. We acknowledge where we're off track, and we resolve to get back on track because we know we're evolving. And the thing is we start to love ourselves enough to say, okay, I've made mistakes, and I intend in this new moment to see differently and do differently. We have to have that compassion for ourselves first, and then we're going to be able to extend it to other people. The thing about this law of life, this law of attraction, is what you personally know and believe is being reflected in all areas of your life. What you personally know and believe is being reflected in your relationships. It's being reflected in your health. It's being reflected in your sense of prosperity. Everything that you know and think, this is your consciousness, right, in the world is being mirrored in your world. So if you just think, here's my world, and just think of it. Do you like what is there? And if so, that's great. That means you're doing a lot of things, you've developed a positive outlook, and you're starting to practice some of these principles. Conversely, if you're looking at your life and you're thinking, what a mess, if you only knew. We understand that, many of us, because a lot of us on this broadcast have been through hellish situations in our life that have caused us to reach out to a class like this or find the Louise Hay material, and where we realize that we can turn it all around, and it won't take us that long either. Do we just need to stay tuned in, keep being reminded, and just have the willingness to trade in the lesser idea for the greater? So as we dealing with our day-to-day life, are we accepting life on life's terms? You might ask yourself tonight, do you have an argument that seems to be ongoing with someone or a grudge? Maybe you don't, maybe you do. I'm sure you probably have before, where things have not happened to your liking. In those moments, we have the ability to be forgiving, or we have the ability to stay stuck. So one of my teachers, one of my books always said, each and every instant is for giving. So if you want to heal your life, just try to keep some of these ideas in mind. Every encounter is a holy encounter. Each and every instant, if you're in connection, is forgiving. You have the ability to extend love very easily if you can get yourself out of the way, if you can learn to be the lifter. If you're bringing all your stuff in, all your anger and resentments, there's a tendency to hang on to that stuff, and then you're just perpetuating self-misery. So what we're going for here is letting them all go. Louise Hay would say, I release them to their greatest good and highest joy. You're doing it, because you want to extend compassion, but you're also doing it because you want to be free yourself. People have often just a different perception than you, and they don't have to be wrong because they think differently or they want something different. It might hurt you in the moment, but it's everyone's prerogative to choose. I mean, we're all created in freedom, and that has to be okay. Sometimes we carry these stories on. We'll talk about what's wrong with people, and we think about what's happened to us in the past. And then we bring all that stuff into the present moment with the notion that we have been wronged or that they have wronged us. And see, this is what people do. So if I'm walking around with, to me, the sky is falling, this person has wronged me, the church has wronged me, people have wronged me, and nobody understands me, and I've been wronged. When you do that, right, and this seems we all do a version of that, we might start thinking of these people as being not good or bad or whatever. We think in terms of the other person as, what's wrong with them, what's missing. I learned along the way in my long life, I was a therapist for a number of years, that it's smarter always to talk about behavior that may not be right rather than assigning blame to people. So people do things, they're evolving and growing, and they do things that you don't like. If you're talking about their behavior, that's one thing. But there's not, in fact, bad people. There's people who do things that maybe are not, from your point of view, okay. We are attempting to grow, evolve, and learn to live in a world where nothing and no one is against us. In other words, to have the consciousness where I'm not going to be offended by everybody. That comes from the 4 agreements where you might say, I refuse to be offended. I'm not going to take everything personally. People are acting the way they're acting, and why do I need to take that on? Why do I need to make that be my problem? I paid a lot of money to learn that one line from a therapist in, I think it was Washington. Every week she gave me the card, whose problem is this? So when you're dealing with people and things are not going the way you like, why take that on? Why make them wrong? Why can't I just realize they're doing the best they can and let it go? Whose problem is that? I mean, I don't really need to take on all those problems. I don't think you do either. What do you think about that? And then in terms of judging groups of people, which is even worse, because when we're judging groups of people, then you're assigning a whole judgment about a whole group of people, and that's always going to be, it's not going to be very smart. I don't know how to say it nicely. You might think of some group as being, say, smart or not so smart. You might think of a group as being generous or not generous. A group of being, it could be a family or it could be a group of people. They're caring or they're violent or they're a bunch of hicks, some people say, or we come up with all kinds of these sweeping assessments about people, and they're always wrong. We're hopefully smart enough in this teaching never to do that. Whenever you find yourself doing a generalization about any group, I don't care if it's a civics group or a class or a cultural group, whenever you even go there, just stop yourself in the middle of a sentence. Hopefully we're smart enough in this teaching never to do this, because each of us know that every person is truly an individualization of spirit. So whoever this person is in front of you or that you're thinking about is manifesting life at their level of understanding. In terms of humanity, in terms of people, in terms of America, in terms of the world, the house is not really divided. It cannot be, ultimately. Even if you look, you might listen to the news channels and you might listen to your friends and talk about all the identities and the differences and the hatred and all that, but the house isn't really divided. In an ultimate way, it can't be. Even if there's an apparent, if it looks that way, there's always an activity that's bringing people toward greater unity. And that's something you want to hang on to forever and ever and ever, because God is the truth, and the truth is oneness. So there's always this divine activity that's healing and bringing things together. It's healing me, it's healing you, it's healing New York, it's healing America, it's healing every country in the world. So that's the thing, a true metaphysician is going to go back and know that there is spirit, there is God, and that's the first reality. This is an important class, it's an important subject if you're able to take it in, because the truth is always going to be there is this presence and there is this power. And then logically you'll get to the next step, and it's in me, operating through me, as me, and I can see peace instead of anything and everything. It's very unwise for us to create any other person as a bad person. I'm going to tell you just a little metaphysical truth. There are no bad people in truth when you consider them from a spiritual standpoint. We know, as I said before, that everyone's doing the best they can, in consciousness with what they have, right? And when you really understand that, you're going to drop a lot of your anger and stuff. I mean, how can you really judge someone when you know this is where they are? This is where they are in 2022 or whatever year we're in. This is how this person this is where they have evolved to be. I said to you before, I had a great therapist in D.C. She always said, whose problem is it anyway? And I would always be in these situations where, I'd probably be judging the hell out of somebody. And she pointed out plainly that to me, whose problem is it? Well, obviously it was my problem. Her gift to me was have me see when I had my nose out of joint about other people's behavior, that they were really doing the best they could. This is where they are. That's what they have evolved to be so far. So that became a challenge for me to keep focusing on when I was disturbed by anything going on in my life, any fact in my life, who had the problem. When we entered this teaching, we quickly learned to step aside and let go of the many of our strong positions, and I might add our petty positions. We sidestep them a little bit when we enter this teaching. People always ask me, what's your position on this? Or what's New Thought's position on this? Or what is someone else's position on something else? And that's a very interesting question. And I'm usually sidestepping that question in case you don't know. Because our teaching is about self-healing. We're not about division. Some of the groups out there, religious groups, even some of the New Thought groups, take strong stands on all kinds of things. And you can do that personally and individually if that's what you want to do, because each of you are free, creative individuals. And it's certainly your right to express yourself, and everybody would support that. But when it comes to being involved in a metaphysical community or New Thought itself, we're not about talking about who's right and who's wrong. It isn't our thing. We do our best to keep what some of you might call a sacred space here, where everybody can come in the community and being given, some lessons in truth that could help lift them up. This place is not about who's right or wrong. It's just not what we do. From a metaphysical point of view, we say in a continuum of life, people are going to say and do many things. And I'm sure you all would agree. You've heard it all. I think I've heard it all. Though I'm sure I will hear more. In the continuum of life, people are going to say and do all kinds of things. Do you think it's wise of me or us to judge someone as right and someone else as wrong when we know perfect life is unfolding in each and every one and all the time, and that people are expressing themselves at the level of their understanding? Last year, there was a lot of discussions going on year before about vaccinations, and people had really strong opinions about the pros and cons. I'm sure you all remember. And that's just one of many discussions in recent times. I certainly understand people have positions, and I honor their positions and their choices. We are metaphysicians, New Thought students first and foremost. We see the underlying unity in life, the goodness and the truth, and so we have a respect for different points of view and forms of expression. Is there a need for anger? Is there a need for me to attack when someone has a different point of view? I hope not. Why can't it be, okay, this person sees this differently. That's okay. I'm cool with it. Maybe you don't want to hang out with these people who see life so differently than you, and that's also good or cool. Both of you are in a different space. And being in a different space doesn't mean anybody's wrong. It just means you're in a different place in consciousness. It doesn't matter either that people don't get you or understand you, because they won't. Why would it matter? Well, there's a lot of people out there who are very codependent. They want this other person to approve of them. They want this other person to like them. They desperately need it, and that isn't what we learn here with Louise Hay is self-acceptance and self-approval are the keys to everything, really. So it isn't about trying to win the approval of others. People, I'm going to tell you right up, will never totally understand you. And you can read into Emerson because he's got lots to say about that subject. He would actually say to be great is to be misunderstood. So if you think you're going to be misunderstood, if you think you're going to be understood all the time, I don't want to burst your bubble, but that's never going to happen. So we really wanting to love ourselves enough where we're good with ourselves. We're not necessarily looking for the likes or looking for the love outside of ourselves. And I'm saying that and we're living in a world where all the social media exists on that whole idea of having people like them and comment and share what they say. As we learn to love ourselves, we don't really need anything outside of ourselves to validate ourselves. Again, self-acceptance and self-approval in the now are the keys to all positive changes. I'd encourage anybody to begin loving themselves and accepting themselves and start using some affirmations that would, fortify that. And let's go and let other people do their own thing. Let go and let God with other people. People have choices and hopefully freedom of expression, and let them make their choices and let them be free in their expression. We are spirit ourselves, and we make choices, and oftentimes we're going to change our mind. let's not look to a mother church, let's not look to an authority figure or a hero of any kind to decide for us what is good. There's a part of you that's connected with everything that's good, so look within. Each of you are standing on holy ground. Within you, you have access to everything. The power to heal, the power to create, the power to change your life and heal your life. Nothing's denied you. We are one with the power, and you have an internal guidance system within you that will always point the way when you're off course. Years ago, there was a car in Europe. It was a Renault. You've heard me tell this before. Their main commercial one year was 10,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong. Well, the fact of the matter is, yes, they can be, and the masses in particular are often wrong, often go wrong, especially when they jump into opinions that they don't do any research upon. Today, as I mentioned just a second ago, we talk about needing likes on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, and there's a lot of talk about identity politics, and people are liking people or positions they don't know anything about the people or the positions. We're people who are so caught up right now in being in the right circles or being approved of. It seems like people are really caught up in the externals, and again, the need for approval or to trend. Honestly, if any of us had half a dozen people in our lives right now, if you had just 6 who really deeply cared about us and loved us, we'd be wealthy as kings and queens. See, but for the world, that's not enough. And in social media, people are living for the applause of people who have never met them. And just think, we're here for such a brief period of time on planet Earth, and we could be cultivating rich relationships where we have a lot of giving and sharing. We're entering a season of Thanksgiving, and of course, it always starts with you loving you, and then extending that love that you feel for yourself, extending that to others. It doesn't really have much to do with expectations of what you're going to get back from them. The real gift is once you love yourself, you can extend that easily to other people without concern of what they may or may not do with it, because you got it. If you have this teaching, you got it. You're one with it, and you have a sense of self-regard, so it's easy for you to extend love. It's easy for you to extend it without any expectation of reciprocation. Each of us have been given such a tremendous gift, and when we awaken to the gift that we are connected with this, with the Most High, when you have everything you need within you, you're inseparable from it. When you know this on a very profound level, you will completely understand that nothing and no one can be against you, in fact and in truth. When you have this, you are a person of high consciousness. If you're not there, just stay tuned in and keep working on loving yourself one thought at a time. If you have this type of consciousness, you will become a person who's learning not to take anything personally, and this is a person who's really evolved quite a bit. And you're evolving to the point where you simply won't go into the discussions, negativity. You're not going to be taking sides. You're not going to be calling anything right or wrong, because you see things from a different perspective. You'll realize that at any point there's perfection. Louise knew this. She didn't take it to quite such a deep level as I mentioned today, but she was wise, and she was wise enough to say, never criticize yourself and never criticize anyone else. And we will take it a step past Louise now by saying, never criticize others either. We'll take it a step further by saying in truth, because we're all interconnected in truth. There's nothing outside of us. And so that will conclude today's lesson.